In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the determinants of supply. Uh, a couple of days ago, we talked about the determinants of demand. These are going to be the same kinds of things. The determinants of supply are the things that cause the supply curve to shift. All right, uh, cause the supply curve to shift left or right. And a leftward shift we would say is a decrease, and a rightward shift we would say is an increase. And so uh, what's going to happen down here is, we'll just preview it a little bit, if we have a rightward shift, then supply would go that way. That would be an increase in the supply. If we have a leftward shift, then that would be something like this, and that would be a decrease in supply. Again, that looks like it might be going up. In economics, we say that's a leftward shift, and that is a rightward shift. So we'll get to that in just a few minutes. So what we want to start talking about is the different factors that will cause this supply curve to shift, that will cause suppliers to either produce more or less at any of these given prices. So we're going to hold the prices constant, okay, and then we're going to be changing these numbers. So the first and one that you'll see the most often is a change in the price of the factors of production. And again, if you recall, the factors of production would be land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. All right. So if any of these prices change, then it's going to cause the producer to either produce more or less. And so let's set up an example here. Let's say that you make bird houses. Okay. You really like birds, and so you make them a house and make it out of wood. And so you have, as the owner of this business, you have two costs. You have labor costs and you have materials. All right. And so let's pretend that your labor costs are, say, what, 10 bucks per birdhouse, and the materials cost is going to be $10 as well. And so your total cost is going to be $20. Now, pretend that you have $60 to spend on production. All right, and so if you have $60 and each one costs 20, so it's $60 and $20 a piece, how many can you produce? And the answer is 3 birdhouses. Okay? 3 birdhouses. Pretend that says birdhouses. Now, the question is, what happens if this labor cost gets changed? And let's say that for some reason the government comes in and cuts minimum wage, and they say it's now $5 an hour. We're going to pay all the workers $5 an hour. So the labor is $5. The materials are still $10, and so our total cost per birdhouse is now 15. So you still have your $60 to spend.
Miss Herring, could you come to the front office, please?
Sorry about that. You still have your $60 to spend. Now they are 15 each. And so how many birdhouses can you produce now? And the answer is 4. And so you can see that if one of these costs go down, then for the given amount of money that the producers have to spend towards production, then they can increase their total output. So this is one of the big ones. You'll also see this written in a couple of different ways. One of them will say this is a change in resource costs. All right, these are the resources. Remember this is the resource market. You might also see it written as a change in input costs. And so these all say the same thing. These are all one and the same. Different textbooks have different things. Whichever you prefer is perfectly fine. But anyway, this is the essence of a change in the cost of the factors of production. So that's number 1 for the determinants. Let's do a second one. Another determinant that we would want to look at. Let's go back to purple. Another determinant that we want to look at is a change in technology. Okay, so that's number 2, change in technology. And you can imagine what this does. Technology generally only increases and gets better. I don't know any cases offhand where technology gets worse unless there's a computer virus that persists. But so anyway, so if there's a change in technology, it's going to make the workers more productive. It will increase productivity. So if workers instead can make 10 of something in an hour, whereas they used to only make 6 of something in an hour, you're paying them the same amount of money. And so a change in technology is going to increase uh, the supply. All right, if there's, like I say, if there's a computer virus that takes over and wrecks the economy for 6 months, then yeah, we would definitely see a supply shift to the left. The third is a change in the price of related goods. All right. And so in this, we've got uh, two different types of related goods that we want to look at. One is something that we say is in a joint supply. All right, so let's talk about that one first. If you have joint supply, all that really says is uh, joint supply is if there's an increase in the production of one thing, then that's going to necessarily cause something else to be produced, more of something else to be produced. And so, not a great definition, but let me just give you an example. Let's say that uh, you are in the leather business. You make leather products. All right. What's going to happen to the supply of your leather if people start to eat more beef? Okay. And so so if the increase in the price of beef, what impact would that have on you? All right, and so if there's an increase in the price of beef, what do we know is going to happen to the supply of beef? All right, using the supply curve. All right, so an increase in the price of beef, and this is for beef. So an increase in the price is going to increase the quantity supplied of beef. Now, where do we get the beef? Get it from the cow. And when they kill the cow to get the beef, what's left over? And the answer is the hide. And so with the hide, that's what you make all your leather products out of. And so if there's an increase in the price of beef, we would expect to see more cows being produced and then slaughtered, and so you would expect to see uh, more leather get onto the market, and so that would increase the supply of leather. All right, and so that's what we mean by joint supply. When one thing is produced, it is going to cause the other to be produced as well. Then we have something called a competitive supply. Now, let's say instead of trying to give you the textbook definition, let's just use an example. Let's say that you're a farmer. All right, it's good, fun to be a farmer. Get out, get to play outside. And let's say we are in Georgia, so let's grow two different crops. This is your field. You have 10 acres. Excuse me. You have 10 acres. Let's say that on this side you decide to grow 5 acres of cotton, and on this side you decide to grow 5 acres of peaches. All right, you are constrained by your 10 acres. You don't have any more to farm. All right, and so the question is, what if the price of peaches doubles? All right, so you're this farmer and you're making your decisions in the winter about what you're going to grow. And so obviously, if the price of peaches is going up, you are going to say, you know what, I'm not making as much money off. I'm going to lose the opportunity to make more money off of peaches. And so what you're going to eventually do is to increase your production of peaches and cut back your production of cotton. And so instead of 5 acres, you might do 3, and you might increase your production of peaches to this full 7 acres. And so by increasing the supply of peaches, you've by default decreased the supply of cotton. And that's what we mean by a competitive supply. All right, if the price of one of those, if the price of one of them changes, then it'll affect the supply of the other. All right, think about any byproducts. All right, when they do wheat, I saw a show the other day. They take the wheat, and you've heard the phrase "separate the wheat from the chaff." They do something with the chaff, and so they made something that looked like plastic out of it, which was pretty interesting. But so anyway, if there's an increase in demand for wheat food products made out of wheat, then you would expect the supply of the chaff to go up as well, and so that would shift the supply of things made out of the wheat chaff. All right, so anyhow, let's go to the next one. The fourth uh, determinant of supply would be change in expectations of future prices. Okay, so if you're a producer now and if you expect the price of your product, if you expect the price of your product to double in 6 months, what are you going to do to the amount that you're producing now? And typically we would say that would be a decrease in the supply, because if you expect the prices to double 6 months from now, then you might cut back production now only to ramp it up later. Okay, if you expect the price of your product to fall in 6 months, then you might ramp up the production now so you can charge people what you're getting for the product now and not lose the money after 6 months is up. All right, the fifth one is an indirect tax or a subsidy. And these are both government actions. We'll just classify them there. An indirect tax is something like a sales tax or any tax that's put on a product in addition to the price. All right. And so cigarettes have an indirect tax. For every pack of cigarettes that they sell, there's an extra tax. I don't know exactly what it is, $3 we'll say, for every pack. And so that would be an indirect tax. And what indirect taxes do is basically add it to the price. And so if we raise taxes, that's going to cause the price to go up, and effectively it shifts the supply curve to the left. If we subsidize something, that's basically giving a company money. It's the opposite of a tax. They're giving them money, which is in essence going to lower the price of the product, and so that's going to cause producers to produce more. So let me see if I can get this chart up here, because I want to show you what would happen. So let's say that, remember this was our example for tutoring, all right, and let's say that we have an indirect tax of $3. Okay, what this is going to mean, and by the way, the sellers pay this indirect tax. We'll just say it's an excise tax. So the sellers would pay it, so you would have to pay it. So if you came to work and you worked it for $5, you'd have to give 3 of that back to the government. This isn't a perfect example, but we'll try to make it work. And so if these 6 people knew that 3 of their $5 is going back to the government, what's going to happen to the number of people that want to do the tutoring? And so this might drop down to 2. And so this would make it to where people would keep $7 and they'd have to give 3 back. And so instead of 15, this might go down to 8. And so it's going to have the effect of shifting that supply curve to the left. Okay. So subsidies would work in the opposite direction. If it was a $3 subsidy, that means that this effectively is 8. And so I'm going to pick up more people. All right. And the sixth and final determinant that we're going to talk about is the number of firms in the industry. All right.
Mr. Tudor, could you
Sorry
come to
about
the
that.
front office?
So, so what we want to do, the number of firms in the industry, let's go back to our tutoring example. We had 33 students in the class altogether. What if another class came in and now we had 60 students altogether? There'd be 60 more suppliers. So odds are that at $5, instead of having 6 people willing to tutor, that might go up to 10. At $10, that might go up to 25. And so just the number of producers is going to cause the supply of that product to increase, shift to the right. The same works in the opposite direction. If there's a decrease in the number of producers, then it's going to cause the curve to shift back to the left. All right. I said that was the last one. Let me do 2 more quick ones. And these aren't always in the textbook, but acts of God would be could be part of the determinants of supply. And this would be something like when we saw the tsunami, earthquake and then tsunami in Japan. that definitely had an effect on the output, the production of goods in Japan. Okay, so tsunami, hurricane might hit when we had hurricane. Uh, I forget the name of the last one that was big, but Hurricane Andrew came through Florida back in the 90s. That's going to have a big impact. We might have a drought. Currently, half of all U.S. counties are experiencing a drought, and that would definitely cause crops to shift back. So acts of excuse me, acts of God might be in there, and then something like war. If we're in a state of war, then obviously it depends on which country you're in. If you look at somebody like the U.S. during World War II, our supply actually went up. But if you are on the
Would the
receiving
fire
end of
department
all the
come to the front
bombs,
office, please?
and the factories are being destroyed, if you look at Europe after World War II, a lot of it had to be rebuilt, and so their supplies would have shifted to the left for the temporary time. So anyway, these aren't typically uh, listed in the textbooks, but it's some that are good to know. So anyway, those are all of the determinants of supply. Let's go back over them real quick. I won't take real long. So the first one, changing the factors of production, changing the cost, the price of the factors of production, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. It's also known as change in resource costs or input costs. The second one that we looked at was a change in technology, which is going to increase production. That would cause the curve to shift to the right. A change in the price of related goods, joint supply. When one thing is produced, another thing is by default also produced. And competitive supply, and this was our farm example, when there's more production of one thing, it causes less of another to be produced. All right. The next one we looked at was change in expectation of future prices. And we looked at indirect tax and subsidy and the number of firms in the industry. Now, real quick, the last thing that I want to do is this. This should look familiar. We've got a change in the supply versus change in the quantity supplied. So let's start with this change in the quantity supplied first. What does it look like? All right, so a change in the quantity supplied is when we move along the curve. So if the price was here, and if the price goes up, this is a movement along the curve. This is a change in the quantity supplied. All right, and a change in quantity supplied is caused by a change in the price. Now, again, like with demand, remember we're going to be throwing the demand curve in here. That's what sets the equilibrium price. So if demand shifts down to here, then that's what's going to cause this change in the quantity supplied. So could be caused by a change in price. Uh, Other teachers like to teach it that it's uh, caused by a change in demand. All right. Either way, whichever works for you, but make sure there's just one supply curve, and that's the change in the quantity supplied. All right, now a change in the supply is when what causes the change in supply. Change in supply is caused by a change in any supply determinant. All right, if there's a shift to the right, if one of those determinants changes, which causes supply to shift to the right, that would be a change in supply. Okay. If one of them causes the supply to decrease, that would be a change in supply. All right, so change in supply, the curves move. Change in quantity supplied, it's a movement along the curve. All right, so that's about it for this lesson. Until next time.